The education world is divided into sectors, each with its set of policies and practices, and it is hard to build bridges between them. The result for learners is that every transition brings disjunction with what came before, and performance often suffers. Hence, the principles of education articulate the implicit assumptions regarding teaching and learning. They apply to all members of the community like students, employees and trustees. These principles intend to provide a foundation on which members of the community develop and teach courses, engage students, hire faculty and staff, design professional development activities and structure the budgets. These principles should inform the daily habitual life of all members of educational institutions, having both immediate and lasting impact. As teaching and learning are at the heart of the education, these principles appropriately shall guide the institutions into the future. It is important that to create a learning environment that values the process of learning as much as the knowledge taught. An environment that encourages independent thinking and divergent activities, and an environment that elevates members of the community. Education in the largest sense is any act or experience that has a formative effect on the mind, character or physical ability of an individual. It is the process by which society deliberately transmits its accumulated knowledge, skills and values from one generation to another. Webster defines education as the process of educating or teaching. Educate is further defined as to develop the knowledge, skill or character. Thus, from these definitions, we might assume that the purpose of education is to develop the knowledge, skill or character of students. As we know, education is essential for everyone. It is the level of education that helps people earn respect and recognition. Education is not all about studying and getting good marks. It really means to discover new things which we don't know and increase our knowledge. An educated person has the ability to differentiate between right and wrong or good and evil. It is the foremost responsibility of a society to educate its citizens. A person becomes perfect with education as he is not only gaining something from it but also contributing to the growth of a nation. Aims of education. Education should develop a sense of common national ethos. Education should develop higher values of life. It should develop qualities of citizenship. It should also derive inspiration from traditional knowledge and real work experience. Education should develop positive attitude. Education should develop a sense of social responsibility. Education should develop vocational efficiency. All human societies, past and present, have had a vested interest in education, and some wits have claimed that teaching is the second oldest profession. While not all societies channel sufficient resources into support for educational activities and institutions. Children are born illiterate and innumerate and ignorant of the norms and cultural achievements of the community or society into which they have been thrust. But with the help of professional teachers and the dedicated amateurs in their families and immediate environs, also with the aid to educational resources made available through the media and nowadays the internet. Now within a few years they can read, write, calculate and act in culturally appropriate ways. Some learn these skills with more facility than the others, and so education also serves as a social sorting mechanism and undoubtedly has enormous impact on the economic fate of the individual. Education equips individuals with the skills and substantive knowledge that allows them to define and to pursue their own goals, and also allows them to participate in the life of their community as full-fledged autonomous citizens. It is not surprising that such an important social domain has attracted the attention of philosophers for years, especially the complex issues that have great philosophical interest. The following are some issues that philosophers have deeply thought about and still they need to be answered. Is education as transmission of knowledge versus education as the fostering of inquiry and reasoning skills? The question of what this knowledge and what these skills ought to be part of the domain of philosophy of the curriculum. The questions of how learning is possible and what is it to have learned something, two sets of issues that relate to the question of the capacities and potentialities that are present at birth. There are many other questions like what is the process or stages of human development, to what degree this process is flexible and hence can be influenced or manipulated, the tension between liberal education and vocational education, the overlapping issue of which should be given priority, education for personal development or education for citizenship, the differences between education and enculturation, etc. It is here that philosophy of education plays an important role in providing direction to education on the following issues, as well as providing a theory of knowledge for education to work upon. Philosophy of education is essentially a method of approaching educational experience rather than conclusions. In brief, it is a philosophical process of solving educational problems through philosophical method from a philosophical attitude to arrive at a philosophical conclusion and result. Thus, it aims at achieving general as well as comprehensive results. Human rights education is an integral part of the right to education and is increasingly gaining recognition as human right in itself. Knowledge of rights and freedom is considered a fundamental tool to guarantee respect for the rights of all. UNESCO's work in human rights education is guided by the World Programme for Human Rights Education. Education should encompass values such as peace, non-discrimination, equality, justice, non-violence, tolerance, and respect for human dignity. Quality education based on a human rights approach means that rights are implemented throughout the whole education system and in all learning environments. At an international level, the Constitution of UNESCO establishes certain fundamental principles such as principle of non-discrimination, equality of opportunity and treatment, universal access to education, principle of solidarity. These principles provide the basis and guidelines for the normative action of the organization. Education must be accessible to all in law and in fact. The principle of non-discrimination is established in UNESCO's Constitution, that is Article 1, Para 2b, guided by its mission to realize gradually. The ideal of equality of educational opportunity without regard to race, sex or any distinctions, economic or social. UNESCO adopted in 1960 the Convention Against Discrimination in Education. This convention constitutes a milestone in providing the legal basis of the right to education. It was the first international treaty to be adopted concerning education as such. Other instruments elaborated by UNESCO and by the United Nations also establish this principle. Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, for example, proscribes any form of discrimination. Under Article 1 of the Convention Against Discrimination in Education, the term discrimination includes any distinction, exclusion, limitation or preference which being based on race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, economic condition or birth has the purpose or effect of nullifying or impairing equality of treatment in education. The first mention of equal opportunity in international treaty dealing with education was in the preamble of UNESCO Constitution. The states parties to this constitution believing in full and equal opportunities for education for all. Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights proclaims something analogous but slightly different, namely that higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. Both the Convention Against Discrimination in Education in the year 1960 and the Convention on the Rights of the Child in the year 1989 refer to the general principle of equal opportunity. In fact, the Convention of 1960 was designed in part to promote this principle. Equality of opportunity and treatment in the matter of education, and specifically included Article 4 to that effect. The Convention on Technical and Vocational Education in the year 1989 also recognizes the right of equal access to technical and vocational educational. Universal access to education is the cornerstone of right to education. This principle can be found in most of the instruments elaborated by UNESCO in the field of education, translated in the normative contents. The principle of intellectual and moral solidarity of mankind enshrined in UNESCO's constitution is a source of strength for realization of the right to education for all. Already reflected in the World Declaration on Educational for All 1990, it underlies the spirit of the World Education Forum, where the international community affirmed that no countries seriously committed to education for all will be thwarted in their achievement of this goal by a lack of resource. Multicultural education is a philosophical concept built on the ideals of freedom, justice, equality, equity and human dignity as acknowledged in various documents. It values cultural differences and affirms the pluralism that students, their communities and teachers reflect. It challenges discrimination in schools and promotes democratic principles of social justice. Multicultural education is a process that permeates all aspects of school practices, policies and organization as a means to ensure the highest level of academic achievement for all students. It helps students develop a positive self-concept by providing knowledge about the histories, cultures and contributions of diverse groups. The various principles of teaching and learning in multicultural society are: first one, professional development programs should help teachers understand the complex characteristics of different groups of children in the Indian society and the ways in which race, ethnicity, language and social class interact to influence student behavior. Second, schools should ensure that all students have equitable opportunities to learn and to meet high standards. Third, the curriculum should help students understand that knowledge is socially constructed and reflects the social, political and economic contexts in which they live and work. Fourth, schools should provide all students with opportunities to participate in extra and co-curricular activities that develop knowledge, skills and attitudes that increase academic achievement and foster positive interracial relationships. Fifth, schools should create or make salient superordinate cross-cutting group memberships in order to prove intergroup relations. Sixth, students should learn about stereotyping and other related biases that have negative effects on racial and ethnic relations. Seventh, students should learn about the values shared by virtually all cultural groups. For example, justice, equality, freedom, peace, compassion and charity. Eighth, teachers should help students acquire the social skills needed to interact effectively with students from other racial, ethnic, cultural and language groups. Ninth, schools should provide opportunity for students from different racial, ethnic, cultural and language groups to interact socially under conditions designed to reduce fear and anxiety. Principles related to school governance, organization and equity. 10th, a school's organizational strategies should ensure that decision making is widely shared and that members of the school community learn collaborative skills and dispositions in order to create a caring environment for the students. 11th, leaders should develop strategies that ensure that all public schools, regardless of their locations, are funded equitably. 12th, teachers should use multiple culturally sensitive techniques to assess complex cognitive and social skills. Based on the needs and demands of education, various education institutions have laid down the many for teaching and learning objectives. These principles represent the shared values, views within the institution that contribute to the quality of education. Few of these principles are an atmosphere of intellectual excitement, an intensive research and knowledge transfer culture permeating all teaching and learning activities, a vibrant and embracing social context, an international and culturally diverse learning environment, explicit concern and support for individual development, clear academic expectations and standards, learning cycles of experimentation, feedback and assessment, premium quality learning spaces, resources and technologies, an adaptive curriculum. The education philosophy also aims to promote teaching excellence, encouraging contact between students and lecturers. Learning arises out of connections and interaction between students and lecturers or the tutors, among students and between students, and ideas which might arise in interactions or in learning resources. Contact is thus essential to building relationships between the lecturers and the students and motivating students. Contact may be in face-to-face learning spaces or through distance education, print materials, but should also be online through the use of discussion forums and other tools. Teachers should promote active intellectual engagement and engaged learning appropriate to the stage and level of the student. Interaction with lecturers, tutors, fellow students, etc. should be on substantive and academically challenging issue. They should be engaged in assignments, online engagement research, etc. Teaching is aimed at helping students to achieve the outcomes of academic programs through mediating and communicating discipline and field-specific knowledge, skills, attitudes and values based on intellectually credible curricula that are responsive to emerging local, national and international perspectives. Teaching should promote the use of higher order thinking skills, for example, the ability to engage actively and critically with the ideas and current debates, reflect on learning and apply principles to new problems and situations, the transfer of learning. It should develop analytical problem solving skills, encourage students to think creatively and holistically, develop intellectual and cultural curiosity, encourage students to challenge assumptions, existing knowledge and beliefs, and to embrace new thinking. Learning involves a process of making meaningful connections between sources of information so that they can act on their knowledge appropriately in specific situations. Learning involves conceptual change and the transformation of knowledge into something meaningful for the individual. Teaching should develop a student's capacity to learn continuously in a rapidly changing knowledge and technology environment. Clearly formulated outcomes result in a sense of common purpose. Teaching should provide students opportunities to reflect critically on what they have learnt, what impact it has had on their perspectives, and how it should influence their future behavior. Deep reflection leads to transformative learning and awareness. Teaching practices are characterized by a variety of teaching strategies, methods, and approaches which establish particular environments in which learning is supported. Teaching acknowledges and actively engages diverse values, beliefs, talents, backgrounds, thinking and learning preferences, needs including special needs, goals and educational experiences, creating empowering learning experiences and environments. The principles of education are based on the concept of life and the aim of existence directed by the nature of its structure and the prevailing conditions of the environment in which we live. Education means an all-round drawing out of the best in the child and man, body, mind and spirit. According to Gandhiji, self-efficiency was the acid test of success of educational system. He laid stress on economic activities in education. The main aim of education is character development. Spiritual development is an important aim of education. Every school should be a community center where all facilities are to be made available for the development of the society as well as of all the individuals. To ensure the quality of education, it is important to develop a coherent policy across the system as a whole. Policy makers should maintain a holistic sense of educational purpose and thus improve progression in learning throughout people's lives. The broad aim of education should focus on concerning economic relevance, social cohesion, and human well-being should inform policy and practice at every level.